I'd wake up like that. It was very, very scary because I didn't understand that I was having a trauma response, right? Money felt unsafe. I was telling myself, money, it is safe to have money. It is safe to have lots of money. I love money. All that, every part of me didn't believe that. People laugh when I say this, but at some point I was like, no, bangloile, straight up. No, truly, guys. No, because what did you call that? How would you explain that? I was like, I have the education, I have everything. You guys don't understand. I went through a major process. I love to be honest because I had to go through a whole process with myself because I was like, now what is this? You graduate, you have all this education, and the very thing that you studied for is the very thing that fails you. Don't you call that witchcraft? Because it wasn't about the money. So on day 6, I start throwing up acid. I'm so stressed. I don't have to worry about money, right? I'm being fed, I'm being clothed, I'm comfortable. No one is stressing me. Everyone is silent. So there's peace, there's silence, there's nothing. But I am in hell, right? But I have this because you're still and you're just introspecting. I'm having this realization that the hell isn't my own. It is self-created.
Hi, Vangi.
Hi,
So I wanted to do an intro, but I'll keep this one as informal as possible. And my intro is, guys, yesterday I got to go to an event with Vangi, and man, how are you feeling after the whole standing ovation and changing lives? I tell you, you changed some lives.
So I'm told I did 2 back-to-back master classes, and I was supposed to get 15-minute breaks in between. But my Q&A sessions, instead of in 15 minutes, ended up in 30 minutes because the organizers forgot. They apparently got engrossed in the topic and the Q&A, and I'm like...
So your sharing touched even the organizers. They forgot to keep time.
That's what they said to me. I was like, guys, are you serious? They're like, we got engrossed, sorry.
There were a lot of big speakers there. And I think I'm always proud when I see an African shining next to global superstars. And you were that yesterday, so super proud of you.
Thank you.
We are going to be talking about money. And my word, Sissy, your story. Can you summarize your story, Vangi, of how you got to be the author of this book, just in brief?
It's just been a very long journey. So this is like my 3rd book, if we count my journal, the Next Level You Woman Money Journal as a book. But this is the 3rd. The first one was Heart, Mind, and Money. And that was really, really great, right?
What was it about?
It was about using emotional intelligence for financial success. So it's Heart, Mind, and Money, using emotional intelligence for financial success. And it's kind of like it goes for over $100 US dollars on Amazon. Like there's just like a lot, there's so much stuff around Heart, Mind, and Money. I didn't actually, it's such an interesting thing. Like I've never looked for a publisher, right? Mm-hmm. Even Penn Macmillan reached out to me from what I was writing on my Instagram. Heart, Mind, and Money, same thing.
They headhunted you and said, we've got a book project.
Yeah, they heard that I was writing a book. They saw me on television. So, okay, here's how the story goes. It's very, very random. So I struggled with panic attacks around money, right? On top of that, yesterday I shared on stage about that, right? That how I came to do this work around money was that I really struggled with panic attacks around money. I couldn't handle money. I couldn't withdraw money from the ATM. Couldn't talk about money, right? If you asked me how much a thing was, like you were just about, like my whole day was going to be about how to regulate myself. And I didn't know about regulating nervous systems, right? It was like, it became a thing where most people would be like, oh, I can't tell my pricing, let's just move on, or come up with something. I would have a full-on panic attack and it would be a thing for a few days, right? So
this is physical manifestation of fear.
Physical. So I couldn't do the psychological thing. I tried the affirmations. You know what would happen to me? I started off with Louise Hay. I think affirmations work, but there are times, the research shows that affirmations don't always work. And there's certain people, when our trauma is very deep, it feels like gaslighting. So affirmations work if you're already close to that breakthrough, right? Then you can use them. But for me, I was like at the furthest end. I was having a panic attack about money. So I would do affirmations, and guess what would happen? I would play them in my sleep because I'd be like, that will bypass the subconscious mind so much more. I would wake up in the middle of the night with panic attacks. I was actually talking to a friend of mine where like, people don't know what it's like to wake up in the middle of the night and your breath is stopping. But I don't understand what was happening because panic attacks during the day with money, and then like now I'm having panic attacks when I'm listening to all these subconscious things, right? When you're doing the affirmations and what is this, the subconscious ones that like you play where there's music and then they just say it and it's supposed to bypass your subconscious mind. I'd wake up like that. It was very, very scary because I didn't understand that I was having a trauma response, right? Money felt unsafe. I was telling myself, money, it is safe to have money. It is safe to have lots of money. I love money. All that, every part of me didn't believe that, right?
So no matter how many times or how hard you said it, you knew inside that I don't believe what I'm saying.
Yes, those parts of me that felt unsafe, that's your inner child, right? So we have sub-personalities, and those sub-personalities are the parts of us that have experienced all sorts of experiences from childhood, not just trauma. So I didn't understand about trauma, right? So when I started having the panic attacks and listening to the affirmations, I had to do a whole backtrack because I was like, oh my God, like I'm doing this work. I'm doing all the work that people are telling me to do. I'm visualizing, I'm doing affirmations, and it's getting worse. Like I'm not getting better. And I used to get so mad because people would like have all these breakthroughs and share how like they did affirmations, they would write them down.
And visualizations
and people would, and I was doing that religiously, but I was having a different experience, like a real mental crisis. So then at some point I decided enough, I need to work with what is truly happening with me. I can't ignore how I'm feeling about money. That's how the book Heart, Mind, and Money came to be. I thought, I'm not hearing anyone talk about panic attacks with money, anxiety with money. I truly thought I was the only person that was dealing with this.
I still haven't met people who have panic attacks. Do you think?
I need quite a bit because like I talk about.
So when you talk about it, you found that there are many people that go through it.
Yes, not to the extreme that I have, but I'm a true believer that we go through extremes so that we can help others that even if they're going through it at a low level.
It came out yesterday, and that's what I was thinking listening to you, that maybe for you it happened that way so that you discover a certain purpose. And when you stand on a stage, people can relate with you.
Yes.
Even if they're not experiencing panic attacks, but they are panicking or anxious about money.
Yeah. So mine was the extreme, right? And I feel like that extreme then helps people feel like, oh, she went to the worst of it. There's still hope for me because like I can still buy bread and milk and not have like a full-on panic attack. It was so hard, and I kept it such a secret, such a secret. There were friends that knew that I was struggling financially and I'd be sleeping on their couches and they would be helping me, which was helpful. But because of that, right, because of that extreme, I didn't have the luxury of like other people just going like, I'm anxious about money, I can just chill, figure it out. I had to find a solution now, right? You know, guys, you know when you're like, when things are bad, you don't have the time. You don't have the luxury of time. And I like other people where you're like, oh, I'll figure it out. You're like, I need a solution now. And when I was hearing that other people, when I noticed that other people are not talking about it, I was like, I have a finance degree from UCT, right? And I also have an MBA from the Simmons School of Management in Boston, Massachusetts. So I was like, my MBA was focused on entrepreneurship, finance, and strategy mainly, right? And so I knew that like my issues were not educational. I was like, I know I'm intelligent.
For you.
Yeah,
You knew what to do. You were just not doing it.
Yes, but it's not that I wasn't doing it, Ntando. I would try. I couldn't, because like I would try to do it, but then I'm panicking. Remember, I know how to do the numbers. I know I need to look at my bank account. I know what I need to do. I have the ability to do it. I have that knowledge. But emotionally, my emotions are crippling me. Does that make sense?
You know the statement I'm thinking of? Someone who would say something like, no matter how hard I'm trying, it's not working.
Yeah, that was me. That was me. And you know, like people laugh when I say this, but at some point, I was like, no, bangloile, straight up. You know, like, no, truly, guys. No, because what did you call that? Like, how would you explain that? I was like, I have the education, I have everything. You guys don't understand. Like, I went through a major process. I love to be honest because I had to go through a whole process with myself because I was like, now what is this? Like you graduate, you have all this education, and the very thing that you studied for is the very thing that fails you. Don't you call that witchcraft?
All right, so when you were at this stage, what sort of deep work did you do to discover where the problem is coming from? Because I think that's where you discovered your purpose.
Because like honestly, if you had told me like in 2011 and 2012 when I was starting to do this work that I would do it for a living and I would help others, I would have said, you're crazy. Because honestly, guys, my aim was I'm going to figure out my finances. I'm going to somehow figure out how to work for an investment bank, negotiate long vacations, and just live a quiet life. You know, that was the aim, actually. You know, I didn't want to publish Heart, Mind, and Money. Jacana Media can tell you, like, when they called me in, I was arguing about having a paper book and the rainforest. I'm a hippie at heart. I was like, you can't print the book. I'm contributing to tearing down the rainforest. And they had to convince me that like an actual book is important. True story. This happened. Jacana Media can tell you.
You had an argument about print.
About being printed and becoming a published author. I promise you.
Because of the environment.
Because, like, I am a hippie at heart, right? Like, I don't know which part of the story of the talk you saw. If you saw the talk where I had my shoes off. The first talk I had on heels. The next
No,
talk,
just the first talk.
Yeah, the next talk I took off my shoes and I was like, I can't do this. Like, I just have to be me. But anyway, back to how I came to do this, right? What I started to do was a friend of mine said to me, go to Vipassana, right? Vipassana is a free 10-day meditation retreat. It's all over the world. We have it in South Africa as well. People want to know more, feel free to Google Vipassana or ask me about it. I love sending people there. So at Vipassana, the trick is you take, well, not the trick, but one of the rules, they have rules. You take a 10-day vow of silence. You don't talk, you don't read, you don't write, you don't have your cell phone.
Whoa.
You hand in your pen, your paper, your reading materials, you hand in your cell phones. You're not allowed to use sign language to communicate with anyone. You don't talk with your eyes. There's no like blinking, talking with your eyes, none of that. You are just living in 10 days in silence. You don't talk to anyone. If you need anything, you can go to the teachers. And so in Vipassana, I was taught about meditation, how to focus on your breath to meditate. And it works differently to other forms of meditation. It's not about clearing your mind and finding peace. Vipassana says, observe yourself, observe your mind. And then they taught us how to go into the body and focus on the sensations in the body, right? And one of the most fascinating things about Vipassana is that you are taught 3 times in a day for an hour each time, so 3 hours a day. A little more than 3 hours, because at the last session, there's also like another 20-minute meditation. You're supposed to meditate by sitting still without moving. So even if a fly comes onto you, you can't swat it away. You are still like a statue for an hour. So your legs get tired, everything gets tired, you get into pain. But the idea is you start to observe your body. And when you start doing that level of meditation, guys, don't worry, they drop you into that on day 4, right? You don't start there. You're not able to start there, in fact, So I was like, when I started doing that depth of meditation, firstly, it was the first practice that I ever did in my life, where I was like, this feels familiar. This is what I've been looking for my whole life, And I've always been a seeker, So I've always been a person that just doesn't take things at face value. I need to experience things. I need to experience spirituality. I need to experience what's happening for me to heal and get things. So when something is just mental, even though I'm great with the mental stuff and academic, I'm an experiential person, So I was like, wow, when I was in Vipassana, I had this amazing aha moment. You don't pay for anything at Vipassana. It's all free. You get your own room. Sometimes you share room and board. Sometimes they even give you blankets if you don't go with your own bedding. They'll give you nice bedding. They'll even sometimes supply toiletry if you can't afford it and you don't have it. They give you food. The food, oh my gosh, guys, go for the food, right? The food is amazing. They really believe in giving healthy food. It's vegetarian and vegan food, very healthy, amazing food. So you don't starve. You don't have any worries for 10 days. They don't want you to worry about anything. They want you to just focus on meditating, right? And being silent and being with yourself. So there was no reason for me to worry about money, right? But I worried about money every single day I was there. Running out of money, still. I was still, because it wasn't about the money. So on day 6, I start throwing up acid, I'm so stressed. I don't have to worry about money, right? I'm being fed, I'm being clothed, I'm comfortable. No one is stressing me. Everyone is silent. So there's peace, there's silence, there's nothing. But I am in hell, right? But I have this, because you're still and you're just introspecting. I'm having this realization that the hell isn't my own. It is self-created. So eventually I throw up, because I'm like, what? What the hell? And at Vipassana, they tell you not to fight it, to just surrender to it and to feel into it and observe it. So I'm observing this. And then I have this aha moment. I kid you not. So day 8 comes around, and I feel in the morning of day 8, at round about maybe 4 a.m., you wake up at 4 a.m. to meditate. So you're meditating from 4 a.m. until 8 p.m.
No, I'm thinking... Someone would have loved everything you were saying until this part to say, I need to go until you said 4 a.m. But
no,
continue.
You're going to Vipassana to work on yourself, right? And in silence. So you can't be talking to other people and be like, do you know what I realized? No, you're silent, you can't write about it, nothing. And this wave of peace comes over me. And this is the biggest breakthrough for me. And it has never left me. This wave of peace that I have never felt in my life. When you just feel like everything is going to be okay, you're okay, even if it's things fall apart, no matter, so I have this deep, deep knowing and understanding that even if I have negative 500,000 Rand in my bank account, I will always be okay. I am going to be okay, because it's not about the money, that I have the power to turn this entire thing around. So I go from that extreme to this on day 8. I didn't expect it, right? And I'm not saying everyone that goes to Vipassana will go through this, because I know many people go to Vipassana and they have to go through several things, right? But I went to Vipassana and day 8, and I was like, oh my God, what the hell is happening? And then from there come these deep insights about how, like, it just came out of nowhere. I call it downloads, right? So in this moment of peace, I start to understand that, wait, it's not about what's happening externally. It's about how I am looking at money. So I'm at Vipassana and I'm having this moment of peace and all this money stuff is coming through at a meditation center. But I'm like, oh wow, what the hell? And it's like, you panicked about money. And that panic has been what has been driving your financial behavior. So now let's see, when you are operating from this space of calm, how you start to behave with money, what happens with money, and how when you think about money. So then I have this realization that every time I think about money, I then have an emotional reaction. And it's not based on what's happening externally with my finances. And I have proof of that, right? So it's easy for me to follow this theory as it's dropping into my head, because I've had like a full 8 days up until this moment where nothing was happening with me and money. But like I've been throwing up, I've been having like all sorts of wild and deep experiences. No one was asking me for money, no one was expecting anything of me. But it was all about money. So I realized that it's not about the money. It's not about what is happening externally. It's about how I've been taught to think about money, or how I've learned to think about money or feel about money. Because for me, it was a big thing that it wasn't just the thinking, it was what I was feeling about money, and that feeling was causing a physical sensation. So every time I thought about money, I had a feeling and a physical sensation, and those were causing such havoc for me that like I was becoming mentally unbalanced, right? And then I couldn't focus and think, and that then impacted my financial behavior and changed everything for me.
Interesting. We'll get to where the root, where the thought was coming, or where the way you were feeling is coming from, the root cause. But you mentioned something yesterday, that from that position that you were acting from, for you it's fear and panic. There are different trauma responses to money, and we respond differently. You said others respond from fear. That's one.
There's
Fear.
4 Fs.
4 Fs.
Freeze, flight, fight, fawn, or people pleasing. And then in my book, I develop a 4th F, force, which is control.
All right, let's talk about those. I want someone who's listening to just reflect on how they respond to money, how they respond to the loss of money, how they respond to when things are tight, and just look at themselves on those categories. What's the first one?
The first one, let's talk about freeze response, right? So when you have a freeze response with money, it's when, like, think about when you're frozen, what happens? Think about when a tiger is running to you. A lot of these responses are prehistoric, basically. They're from the Stone Age. The way that the body responds to trauma and the nervous system responds to trauma is to keep us alive, right? So when a tiger was running towards our ancestors, or in our case, a lion, right? When a lion was running towards us, some would freeze. You've seen how some people, when things are happening, they just like, freeze. Yeah. So that sometimes happens with some people when it comes to money. It's like you just go, you are so overwhelmed by fear, you can't process it, or guilt, or overwhelm. Guys, fear is just one emotion. There are so many other emotions that we feel with money, more than 20 in fact, right? So you're like, right? And then you can't move, you can't do anything. So that means that when the bills come, when there's not enough money, when someone is responding in freeze response, they are the opposite of someone who's responding in force, right? Which is control, which is like, I don't have enough money, I'm going to take control of the situation. Let's see. Yes, right? That you've got people like that. And then the ones that are responding in freeze, they just go like, I can't do this. And they run, which I shared, run to the bed and like stay in bed. And they just go like, they wait for a miracle, right? There's some of us like that, right? I used to be like that because it was so scary. The fear was overwhelming. So I would freeze, I would run. So then you just stop. You don't look at your bills. When the bills come in, you ignore them. You pray for miracles. You don't think, oh, when people tell you this is how much you're going to make, you say, okay, that's fine. You don't negotiate because it's so scary, right?
Well, even when it comes to potential earnings, you don't negotiate. You just freeze either way. If
money is a trauma for you, you don't negotiate. And that's a big thing for a lot of women. Did you know that? That there's there's a book called Women Don't Ask, I think. I think that's the title. And it basically explains, when I was in the MBA program, so I went to an all-women's MBA program, and one of the things that they would teach us was like a portion of it would be gender studies. And they explained that when they look at research, why most women don't earn at the same rate as men. It's systemic, don't get me wrong, very systemic, but the system teaches women not to ask, to be good girls. So where men will ask for raises, negotiate their salaries, ask for more, as women, we don't usually ask. So even asking and talking about money becomes a freeze response, You just take whatever you're given, right? Or you walk away, you don't know how to negotiate. Negotiation and asking is definitely a skill I had to learn. I had to break free from that because I was like, oh my God, people will think I'm greedy. People will think that I'm a gold digger, all of those things, right? Whereas as men, you guys don't have those titles. If you want more money, nobody goes to you, you're a gold digger, right? You're given that permission. So freeze mode, it affects all areas of our finances.
Well, you mentioned the opposite already, force. And when you were talking about it yesterday, I was thinking of people who grow up in families where the parents didn't have a lot of capacity to provide for the kids. And then this child takes over and becomes a breadwinner and just takes control.
At a young age, yeah.
And then they grow up and become this super, I don't know what to call it, but someone who just controls everything. And even when they get into their family, they bring that with them.
Yes.
So that's force.
That's force. Like, there are people like that in this world, you know? It's like I spoke on stage about like my mom, right? My mom is that kind of person. And we all respond to trauma differently. We've all seen this in our families, right? Like you have those family members, like for example, my mother, she looked at the situation in her teens and was like, okay, nobody's doing anything in this family. I'm going to be the one that's going to build the house, make sure that everyone is educated. They take control in that way. They're like, I'm going to sell on the side. I'm going to sell sweets. I'm going to sell clothes. I'm going to do this. There'll be money coming in. They take control. Then we have other family members that we see, right, that are like, oh my gosh, this is scary, and they do nothing. They can't get out of bed. They don't even have the motivation to go to school. They don't do any of that. They're responding from a freeze mode, and it's almost like even as they grow older, they're not actually trying to hustle or do anything. In fact, they stay in the same position. They live in the same house that they live and die in the same house that they grew up in. You know, they never ever make strides. We shame those people, but it's a trauma response. It's a freeze response. The people that go into control mode have a hard time understanding these people that go into freeze mode. Because to them, they go like, dude, wake up and hustle. They are the true hustlers, these ones that go into control mode. They really struggle with these ones in freeze mode, right? So that's what I talk about in the book, is those dynamics. What's your money personality, right? Is that we all have different trauma responses. Then you've got the one, so the eternal child goes into freeze mode, right? And we know those people. They'll be in their 50s, but still living at home. Mom is still cooking for them. Other family members are looking after them. And we're like wondering what's wrong with them. And people will even say to me, we got the same opportunities. I went and I did something with my opportunities. We both grew up in this situation, but I went and I did something. And I always say to people, we don't respond to trauma in the same way. Especially if you went into control mode, you're a fixer, right? I didn't go into control mode, right? I didn't. But I was a runaway, so you go into flight mode, which is you run.
So that's number 3.
Yeah, sometimes you run and you physically run, right? I shared how I've lived in 12 different countries, visited way more.
Oh yeah, so that was you running.
Yes, that's the runaway. You're in flight mode, because remember I said I would take out a credit, so guys, I shared on stage, I would take out a credit card in Johannesburg, I had a credit card. In London, I had a credit card. In Boston, I had credit cards. I had credit everywhere. I was doing debt well. In every country that I would go to that was willing to have me and give me credit, I would go negotiate and do that.
Okay, that sounds more like courage or bravery than you running. So how do you...
No, it's running, because I would create debt this is how crazy it is. I had debt in South Africa and I was like, no, I can't deal with this. Let me try London. Then I get to London and I'm like, ooh, then I create debt in London and I'm like, I don't know how to pay this off. It's beyond me. Let me go to the USA. So it's not courage, it's running.
Dare I ask if you went back to those people and said,
I did.
I'm sorry. I
did. I paid off every single penny. So that was part of the journey, right? Mm-hmm. And we can talk about that. But I wanted to just explain that when we're in flight mode, we're running. Mm-hmm. Some people like me have the opportunity to physically run. Maybe you owe people in one town and you're in South Africa and you move to another town. I've met people like this where
change your number.
You're still in South Africa, you change your number, you do that, right? And the other thing is I didn't answer phone calls. If you were an unknown number, a private number, you weren't getting I was not answering your call. I'd block you, in fact. I was like, don't need to know who this is. If you knew me, you'd WhatsApp me or text me. Here we go. I didn't answer because I was running, right? So think of running also as avoidance. So the other thing that we don't talk about is when we're in flight mode, we can also run to toxic things that don't help us. So I did it in a fancy way and in a way that we can now laugh at, right? Because in a way, no one was harmed, institutions got their money back, all of that, and I was having fun in the process. But some people run towards toxins, so alcohol, right, drugs, because the aim is not to face the challenge. So whatever to find an escape. So I was lucky in that I had the resources to escape and to make it look fun and make it look good. But when you don't, some people will start literally drinking because of our money problems. We know that, right? So
I'm
that
curious,
is the runaway.
When you're going from country to country, were you posting on social media? So your friends would just see that she's having the time of her life.
I owed some of them money, but I think I just had really good friends, my friends were very patient. They seemed so understanding. It's so weird. I never lost family or friends because of this. People would see me posting. My friends were they never asked for their money back. They were so chilled with me, so patient, until I went on the journey. And then one of the first things that I did was I literally sat down so when I started going on this journey, when I came out of Vipassana, the very next thing I did was I got a life coach, right? And I was like, it is time to focus on my emotions and my mind and my nervous system. So I was very, very particular. I was like, I want a particular coach who does work on the nervous system and has some kind of understanding of trauma. Not, because no one was really coaching on money. And I think even till now, no one's really coaching on money the way that I do it. But I was like, I can get someone who can just coach me to understand myself. And I wanted someone who had a Buddhist background and a meditation background so that they could understand where I was coming from and what I had now had this whole new discovery. And it was great because I was still so passionate. So I did it. One of the first things I did was she taught me about living in integrity, right?
Oh, okay.
And I was like, whoa, okay, so we spoke about that. And living in integrity is aligning your thoughts, your words, and your actions, right? So that is what alignment is. It's not these, like when we talk about alignment in manifestation, we think, and like when people talk about that, when they talk about law of attraction, they think it's just about energetically aligning. No, you automatically energetically align when you do what you say you're going to do, right? So you are in alignment and your actions are neutral and your emotions are also okay with that. So it's not like I'm thinking this particular thought, but I'm anxious about that. And actually what you're aiming for is to get to neutral, not gratitude, not happy, not any of those things. It's just feeling calm.
Just to be neutral.
Right? So one of the first things I had to do as a runaway was I listed every single debt I had, every single person I owed money to, every single bank, every single credit card, everything across the world. And then I called people. I called the institutions. And I said, this is my account number. This is how much I owe. Can I make a payment plan? And then part of remember being in integrity was I was like, I am out of integrity with money. So what I am attracting, and I was trying to build a business and be an entrepreneur, I'm attracting clients who are a reflection of me and are not in integrity with money. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah, so...
In a very scary way, though.
Exactly. So I was like, if I want people to pay me in my business and for me to start making money, I have to start paying the people that I owe. And I need to start honoring people who offer me services so that people who are getting a service from me can start to pay me. And that's how I started making money in my business. And as I started making money in my business, I was able to pay back debt. And it became very, very important for me to say that. And also, when I didn't want to do a thing, it was very, very critical for me to say, I don't want to do it. Not to say, maybe I'll do it. Yes, I can borrow you the money. Let me think about it. Because it was about being in integrity, right? So I don't always master this, don't get me wrong. But my whole thing is I'm always working to try to be that way more than anything. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. At your worst moment, how bad did it get in terms of debt?
I mean, I was $60,000 in debt before I was 28. Like, I feel like that was over R1 million in debt. Like, I was like...
Yeah, that's over $1 million.
And like, I think I had about...
At 28?
At 28. And I had when I wrote down the number of people I owed, I mean, it was terrible. If you were my friend, I maybe... was taking from you, and maybe I didn't owe you money, but like I was lying about my finances to you, maybe not verbally, but like through my actions. I was pretending to be someone I was not. I was still going to expensive restaurants with you, all of that. So part of this thing with being in integrity was I started saying to my friends, like, especially when I was living in Boston, sorry guys, like that restaurant is out of my budget, you know? It was, so I think it wasn't just the debt, it was how I was living my life that was so completely, I feel, when I look at it now, it was a little chaotic and out of control, you know? I had so much going on, and a lot of it, I think at your worst with debt, it's so much of your life is about making sure that others don't know how bad the situation is.
And so you end up overcompensating and overspending just to
Exactly.
keep up the image.
Exactly. So it was, so I think for me, the journey, and like when I started on this journey, I really stuck to it. It took me 3.5 years to pay back that $60,000 in debt. And when I couldn't pay back a company or a corporate or something, I would get on the phone and say, sorry, I couldn't pay you back. I could have easily left the US, which I did. I left the US, but I could have easily left and decided that I was never going to pay anyone. Does that make sense? There was no change numbers because I was South African and I was coming back to South Africa. There was no reason for me to pay Sally Mae, the student loan company, to pay some of my lawyers, to pay some people that had been working with me in the US. I didn't have it wouldn't have affected my life in South Africa. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But this wasn't about what would affect my life. It was about I would know I didn't do that. And it's like that level of integrity, right? It would be, I understood at my core that I would keep attracting, even when I was in business and running a business, those kinds of clients who would pay me halfway and leave or not pay at all, This was very, very important to me. So that's where the work is. So for me, that was one of the first steps. But one of the other practical steps that I shared was I looked at my bank account for 5 minutes a day, every day, focus on my breath. Yes, I do.
Is this when you wake up in the morning?
Whenever, guys.
Okay.
In the afternoon, after you've eaten, in the evening, in the middle of the night, if you're a person that wakes up at night, has a hard time falling asleep, open up your bank account, look at it, whatever, as long as you're doing it, right?
Look at your bank account for 5 minutes every day.
Yes, and then close the app.
Because when you say that, there were a lot of people that were saying,
did you see how the audience reacted?
That might not be a good idea.
And that's exactly why we do it, right? Part of it is we look at our bank accounts to retrain the reptilian part of the brain, the amygdala. We're retraining the amygdala so that it doesn't respond to money with fear, with anxiety, with guilt, with shame, with overwhelm, all of these emotions, right? What often happens is our brain and our nervous system has learned from childhood, from our caregivers, how to respond to money. So I spoke about my panic attacks, but I learned how to respond to money with panic and with anxiety, not panic. My uncle didn't have panic attacks, but when I was in my teens, I lived with my uncle, and my uncle earned a lot of money. But every time he had money, the money would disappear within a week. And then he was an electrical engineer, and by the end of 7 days, he would have to ask my grandmother, who was a pensioner, for money. We didn't have.
How much are we talking about?
Like close to 80,000, if not more, a month in the late 90s.
That's probably double now.
That's probably double now. So I knew it wasn't about the money.
And you finish in 7 days.
Listen, guys, when you are scared of money, you will get rid of it. That's why I say to people, when people watch You Blew It, I blew it, right? I'm like, this tracks, this makes sense, because people would say to me, and I can explain it. If you ever want me to explain it, I can explain it. I have many things where I analyze the I blew it thing, right? But if you don't feel safe with money, and money makes you anxious, and you don't, what do you do when you don't feel safe with something?
Get rid of it.
Run from it, right? Avoid it, get rid of it, all of those things. So when we don't feel safe with money, we will find a way to spend money as fast as possible and get rid of it, which is what's happening in I Blew It, right?
So you're saying a lot of the times people will be doing this, it's a traumatic response, and they're not aware that is why they're doing it.
Yes.
It feels like I'm just enjoying my life.
Exactly. It feels like that. It looks like that. Everyone would say to me, oh, your uncle gets so excited when he has money, he loses his head, he just loves spending money. But then when I started my research, I started to understand that wait, excitement and nervousness have the same physiological response in the body. They feel the same to you in the body. So what we were sensing in the house wasn't excitement. We were sensing my uncle's nervousness and anxiety around money. Right? Because I explain in Heart, Mind, and Money that when you feel excited about something, you want to have more of it. You want it in your space. When you feel anxious about money, you want to get rid of it. So what happens when we grow up as children is that our nervous systems, our bodies, nervous systems, and our entire beings learn from our caregivers how to behave. That's called co-regulation. It's like, it's a beautiful thing being human. Like, nervous systems can sense each other. It's like this magical thing, right? Energetic, right? And it's called, so what science or psychology calls it is co-regulation, right? So you as a child don't know enough about the world. So we learn how that something is safe or not safe by feeling into our caregivers' nervous systems.
So you tap into your mother's fear to know that I'm in a fearful, scary environment. Exactly. But it doesn't just stop with scary environment. It's that when your caregivers, be it your aunt, uncle, whoever your main caregiver is, whatever they are sensing whenever they deal with money, that's what you're tapping into. So you're learning that this is how I should deal with money. So what I was learning when my uncle was feeling anxious and unsafe with money, I was learning and I was observing through learning. I was learning through observation, right? I feel scared. It's scary to deal with money. And when you feel scared to deal with money, what do you do with money? You give it away as fast as possible. So it only made sense that when I then grew up, I behaved the very same way with money. That's what my body had learned. That's how I had learned to respond with money, right? So I really started doing what my uncle did, which was I started getting rid of money as soon as I made it. Let's close this off with this. You are saying there are people that have a traumatic response to money, and it's not down to what they've learned, but it's down to the generations before them.
Amen. And so your parents learned to deal with money by tapping into their caregivers' nervous systems, your grandmother, your great-grandmother, all of that, which is why it can be so difficult to create generational wealth. And why, I had someone come up to me yesterday, after yesterday's conversation, and she was like, I am repeating my mother's patterns, and now I'm seeing my son repeat my patterns, and she's like, how is this happening? So she said the talk helped her understand that. And I was like, you guys just all tapped into each other's nervous systems. And so you started behaving in the same way with money. Doesn't matter what you were saying to each other, the education, the mental stuff, right? So you're trying to fix something that's what I was saying about the affirmations, right? I was trying to do a mental thing, even with budgeting. I was trying to fix a physical response because trauma lives in the body. I was trying to fix a physical and emotional response with logic. It can't be fixed with logic, So it didn't matter. In fact, the more money I made, the worse it got. I think I shared that, I was making $8,000 or something a month for 40 hours of work a month when I was working for the Saudi royal family. And I literally ended up blowing all that money. I ended up in even more debt. And
you said you don't know what you did with that money.
I don't know what I did with that money.
For context, if you're not converting, that's over 150K a month for 40 hours
of work a month. I was barely working, but contrast my story with people in I Blew It, right? It's not very different, right? And then yet, when I was making less and earning in South African rands, the dollar and the pound were going up, and that meant my debt was going up. I was earning in South African rands, But when I started to do the inner work and started to focus on my trauma responses and my triggers, what happened? I paid off my debt in 3.5 years. I was able to track every penny. I knew where it was going. Now when I make lump sums, I know where they're going. I know what I'm doing with it. I have something to show, right? That is the difference. When you are operating and when you're being driven by your trauma response, it's very unconscious, and it's the parts of you. And yesterday I said, who's running your money, right? Who's managing your money? Is it your 4-year-old or your 15-year-old self, right? Because the parts of us that don't feel safe with money are the ones that then come to the fore. The parts of you that remember, oh my gosh, this is how uncle used to behave with money. And they come straight up and they go, this is what kept our family alive for decades, and for centuries. So we got rid of money. This is why we are still here. Because your entire nervous system and your entire brain is hardwired not to have you expand, not to have you create generational wealth. It is hardwired to keep you in survival mode, to make sure that you are breathing today, right? That you are breathing tomorrow. And the only way that it knows that you will for sure be breathing is to go back to what kept your ancestors alive. So if fear, running away, being in struggle kept your family alive, that's what you do. That's what you do, because it's all about survival, right? So it's about rewiring our nervous systems.
This has been great, man. I feel like I just barely scratched the surface. Oh. You talked about the first book and we ended up here an hour later. Tell us about this one and how people can reach out to you and yeah.
Oh my gosh. So this book...
She said she doesn't carry books. She's got people for that.
So this book is an exclusive books, guys. It is What's Your Money Personality? Changing the Way Black Families Manage Their Finances. This book is at exclusive books. It's at Bargain Books. It's at Wordsworth. You can get it at Take a Lot. If you're in Johannesburg or in the Gauteng region, check out Book Circle Capital, bookcapital.co.za. It's run by Suella, and she's amazing. She will get you a copy of the book, and she usually delivers within, I don't want to promise anything, right? But I'll just say she delivers within a very short space of time, right? So she's amazing. Order from her. In this book, we just explored the 3 different trauma responses, right? We didn't go into fight and we didn't go into fawn, the people-pleasing response. In the book, I really unpack all of that, and then I help give you exercise. I give you exercises to help you heal all that, right?
All the generational trauma.
Yeah, well, you can't heal it all from a book, but at least I give you, I don't want to say I help you, I give you a starting point. The book is a very great starting point, right? So I give you a starting point of where to start, right? With this work, and where you can, so that you can start healing and unpacking ancestral money trauma. And then I also give you your 5 golden archetypes. So when you're reacting from your trauma response, you're reacting from your shadow archetype, right? You're more likely to be triggered into acting from the shadow archetype. When you respond from a neutral space, you're still in your archetype, but every archetype has a golden archetype. And in the book, I share how you can utilize your golden archetype to start building generational wealth, because every archetype is very different. For example, if you are a person like me who's a runaway and your golden archetype is the grounded seeker, you're not going to make money in the same way as the people that go into control, which are the fixers, and their golden archetypes are the sovereign ones. Fixers very rarely go broke, right? Even in their shadow archetype. They don't know that because they go into control mode. They look at the rest of us who are like, oh my God, I can't do it. And they're like, you can sell something, get up and do something. And the rest of us are like, we really can't because we're overwhelmed emotionally. Those guys are never going to understand the rest of us. Honestly and truly, they will keep sharing personal finance information that is very like go do.
Hustle,
Go hustle, take control. But for the rest of us, it's not the same. And that's what this book is talking about. And then I talk about how within families, how do all these archetypes interact? Because the truth is that we are a collective people, right? As Black people. So it's not just me. Like, I still have to interact with my mom when I make money, my dad, my sister, like all my other siblings, my cousins. So how do you interact, and what is happening? Why do we clash around money? And how can we maneuver those clashes? That is the core of it, right? Because at the end of the day, our biggest strength is still the fact that we are a collective.
Your hard stop is now. Thank you so much. Yo, Doc, she is as deep as you said. She said I should have a conversation with you. You are a very deep person. I'm really glad we met. Yeah. This has been food for the soul. I think I'll look for you so we talk a bit about the archetypes. And there will be a lot of curious people there. This is a book you really want to support, not for the author, but I look at it as supporting yourself, so that you understand where you are in your journey, why you do what you do. And really, the passion that I have is for every African to be financially literate and to get moving on their finances. So this is good. I'm happy this was here. This will be a copy for me as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you're here till this point, you already know that you will be back at some point. We will put resources for you to find the people that she was talking about, the links that she described, some of them. We'll put them in the description. So thank you. And from us, see you on the next episode.
Thank you.